But to introduce our speaker, I want to welcome Keith Mason to our screen, our fellow member. Keith, great to see you. You know, those of you who know Keith, he's currently principal of KWM Capital Management, where he's involved in that public-private sector space where, infrastructure and private efforts meet public policy. So, but you've had a long history there, certainly with a long career at Denton's, advising some of the biggest players in the world on matters of government affairs, public policy, and infrastructure. So, Keith, but you also have, in some sense, a horse in this race. I don't know literally at the Belmont Stakes, but certainly you've been involved as a partner in thoroughbred racing. So we'll turn it over to you for our program.
Well, thank you, President Cannon. It's my honor to be a part of this program and to present our guest speaker. Just like the name Essential Quality of his Belmont winning horse that you just witnessed on video, Dan Pride personifies the meaning of that name in both his personal and professional life. But while many of us are somewhat strangers to the thoroughbred industry, Dan Pride is no stranger to Georgia. Dan grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, where he developed his passion for the love of horses, and later attended and graduated from the Baylor School in Chattanooga, which I know many Georgians in our club have also attended. And he also has served on the board of trustees there. After graduating from Baylor in 1987, it was his athletic prowess in another sport, football, that led him to the University of Georgia, where he earned a walk-on position as a safety for then coach Vince Dooley's final seasons on that team. And it was also at the University of Georgia, in addition to his degree in history, he met his lovely bride, Beth Hackett, from Rome, Georgia. They have two children that have also gone to colleges here in our community. Eliza just graduated from Emory University last spring and now lives in New York City. And he has a son named Lewis, who is a junior at the University of Georgia, both he and Beth's alma mater. Dan is not a gambler, but he took probably one of the biggest gambles one can take. After he had gotten out of college, he and his wife, Beth, both educators, were significant players at the Hammond School in Columbia, South Carolina. And Dan had already been the principal of the middle school and was offered the position to become the principal of the upper school. But instead of accepting that position, Dan decided he would give it all up, move to Lexington, Kentucky, work from the ground up, work with some of the leading thoroughbred horse stables in the country there, and is now the head of the world's largest thoroughbred racing operation, Godolphin Stables. And Godolphin, being the COO of Godolphin is like being asked to run the New York Yankees. That's how big it is in that sport. So it is my honor and privilege to present to you our guest speaker today, Mr. Dan Pride of Lexington, Kentucky.
Thank you, Keith. What a great honor. And thank you for having me to present today. I do have some Georgia roots. One thing Keith did not mention, I've got a famous first cousin chef in Atlanta, Linton Hopkins, who's got several restaurants there. And his father, my uncle, is retired from Emory. He was a teaching physician at Emory for a number of years. And so I love Georgia. I love Atlanta. And I am thrilled to be with you. So a little bit about my journey. So I started this horse journey when I was 4 years old. I got a pony when I was 4 years old, and that kind of started my love of horses. And I played a team sport and didn't touch a horse from the time I was 10 till about 20. And then got back into this actually as a senior at the University of Georgia. I had a horse my senior year of all things, and I kept it on a farm outside of Athens, owned by a guy who was very well known named Hayward Allen, car dealer in Athens, former Georgia football player. And he and I met through random circumstances and kept a horse there and did odd labor to pay off my board bill. But then I went into education. I was a history teacher. I loved our talk earlier. I learned a lot there. So thank you for that. And moved to Columbia, South Carolina. And for 5 years taught history, coached football and track, and was an administrator, but had this horse bug on the side. And I had gotten to know someone in Columbia who was very active in thoroughbred pre-training. This is someone who takes young horses, teaches them how to be race horses. And he had kind of taken me under his wing. Kip Eltzer is his name, still a very good friend. And he had introduced me to this world in Lexington, which I really didn't know anything about. And it was very foreign to me, but he had introduced me to this. And so in the spring of '99, as Keith said, Beth and I made that move, kind of chased after this thing called the thoroughbred business and moved to Lexington. And I started summer of '99 working on a farm as a groom, just bottom of the ladder, and got lucky and got a series of opportunities and moved some farms first couple of years, and wound up in the fall of 2002 with an opportunity to start at Darley, which had just bought the historic John Bell farm from the Bell family. One of the sons, Jimmy Bell, is still very active here, works with me, and got a chance to work at Darley as a stallion administrator, kind of what I call it, the loose phrase. This is a little crude, but it's the best way to describe it. I was a horse pimp, and I managed stallions. So people that own brood mares would call me and ask if they could breed their mare to one of our stallions. And I was in charge of arranging those deals and doing contracts. And so that was my start here at Darley in 2002. We had just really started in Lexington a stallion operation that same year, and kind of grew within the company. And by 2006, I got the opportunity to become COO. Did that for a few years. And in '08, another Dubai-based, we're a Dubai-based entity. Another Dubai-based entity had bought one of the auction houses, thoroughbred auction house called Fasig Tipton. And for 5 years, I ran Fasig Tipton, the auction house, and then came back. That was great timing, by the way. '08, '09, as you know what happened. Thoroughbred auctions were not immune to the same pain that went across all other businesses, but it was a great learning experience for me to get through that. But moved back to Darley in 2014 to my old job, and have been here ever since. We've rebranded the whole operation as Godolphin. And to give you an idea, we basically have two parallel operations. We've got the Darley operation, which is really our commercial operation, and that's the stallions. So people, again, pay us to breed their mares to our stallions. You'd probably be interested to know we've got 10 stallions on our roster, and this year we'll generate somewhere north of $40 million in stud fee income. So it's a good business if you get it right. That's the Darley business. Running parallel to that is Godolphin. And Godolphin is our private operation. That's where all the brood mares are owned. All our racing stable races in Godolphin. So those two kind of go side by side. Essential Quality is a great example of what happens. Essential Quality races for Godolphin, but he'll retire and he'll become a stallion for Darley and be on our Darley stallion roster. So that's the way we structure things. And, we've had a great run here in the last year and a half or so. It's a cyclical business. It's very competitive. But fortunately, the last year and a half, things have gone our way. And Essential Quality is our color bearer. But we've had some other good horses that are out there running right now that are making us proud. So it's been a good run. But in general, try to give you a perspective on what draws people to this business. What's the hook that brings people in? And I kind of view there's three broad categories that serve as the hook to bring people into the thoroughbred business. The first is that social aspect, the pageantry. A day at the races can be a great day spent. Royal Ascot just finished in England, which is, one of the height of the racing season globally. There are races all over the world. It's an international sport, and the pageantry that you can get and be involved in different parts of the world is something that's special. Second is the gambling side. As Keith mentioned, I am not a gambler. I will bet every once in a while, but a good gambler is someone that is not emotionally attached to what they're doing, and that is not me. I'm very biased to what our racing stable is doing and the sons and daughters of our stallions. But a good handicapper is somebody that can separate all that emotion. They can look at a set of data and they can come to their own conclusion, regardless of who owns the horse, what the stallion is, what the mare is. They don't care about any of that. They're just looking at data. And I'll say, from a gambling perspective, horse racing has definitely undersold itself. There's a lot more competition, and now, especially with sports betting opening up all over the country. But there's no house in handicapping. You are betting and playing against everyone else in that race that's betting that race. And the odds, it's parimutuel betting. It is strictly a math formula. The odds on a horse, it's simply how much money is bet on that horse in relationship to all the money bet in that field on that race. And so that's how you come up with the odds. And so good handicappers can look at that and they can handicap and figure out, all right, which way do I need to go here based on the odds? And, that's another thing that brings people in, is that gambling, that competition. The third area is what drew me into this, and that's the horse. And, the animal itself, it's magnificent. Being close to them and being around them, you realize, they're really a combination. They're not a loyalty like a dog, I'm going to say, but, they definitely have an attachment to people. And the history of horses all through mankind is well documented, and how important it is. And there's still that aspect to me, of a horse being drawn in by it. And so that's what brought me into this, when I decided to move from Columbia, South Carolina. So a little transition now to how is this from a business perspective? Because it really is unique. People who get involved in owning thoroughbreds, in a way, it's like owning your own professional team on whatever scale you can afford to do it or choose to do it. And, between breeding and racing, there's a lot of commercial activity that people can take part in. And let's just talk about the breeding side of it. So there's about 20,000 now, just under 20,000 thoroughbreds bred a year in the United States. And there's all different types of people who are breeding these horses. Kentucky is the number 1 state in terms of number of horses bred, but it's happening in states all across the country. There's not a big breeding market in Georgia, but there is in Florida, New York, Louisiana, California, Texas, obviously Kentucky again being the biggest. People who breed these horses, a lot of them are sold at auction. And the mentality that's drawn to this business is really a trading mentality. There are a number of people who've gotten in this business and been successful with it in trading horses. There's basically an auction for thoroughbreds in the United States once a month. Now, there are different stages of their development. There's auctions for brood mares, the mamas. There's auctions for yearlings, which is one of the biggest markets that happens. Keeneland here in Lexington is a huge marketplace. Fasig-Tipton, which is a competitor to Keeneland, where I worked, is a big marketplace. They sell 2-year-olds in training, which I kind of compare to, that's like going to a combine for an NFL draft, and you get to watch the 2-year-olds train. They've never run in a race, but you get to watch them train. So there's auctions constantly, and there's a lot of activity for people who want to trade. There's a lot of liquidity, and there's the opportunity for people to move in and out of these horses as an asset class. And then if you want to look at how do I start, it's a big question. What's the first step I can take if I want to learn more and do this in a minimal risk situation? The straightforward best way to do it is with a syndicate. And actually, one of the original syndicators is a former Atlanta guy named Cott Campbell, who unfortunately has passed away. But Cott Campbell had an advertising business in Atlanta, and then he started a syndicate called Dogwood Stables. And Dogwood started, and that really showed the model. And I compare it to like a mutual fund. It's where you'll have multiple horses in one package, and as an investor, you can just buy a sliver of that group, and you can learn how the operation works. 2 of your own, Larry Conley and Keith Mason, have got started with an own Atlanta-based syndicate. West Paces Racing is up and going, and that's an opportunity. I know that folks from that area have taken advantage of learning about this business, getting in there. But just like anything else, you need to find like-minded people that have a track record of success and that understand what you're trying to accomplish. But I think syndicates are a great way to introduce people to this sport and give you a taste to see if it's for you. It's a great family investment. All generations can be involved. And again, a day at the races is something special, especially when your horse wins. The last topic I'll kind of hit, and then we'll open it up to questions. There's obviously been a lot of talk about this year's Kentucky Derby. There's been talk about other aspects of the business. The core challenge right now that is starting to get some answers to is right now racing is legislated by 38 states. There's no current overarching federal legislation that's actively managing all racing. It's done by each 38 states, have their own infrastructure, their own rules, and that has caused all kinds of problems for the business over the years. And I think we're getting close. There's been some federal legislation that has passed. It is not currently in place, which is supposed to happen in 22. That could make a movement towards addressing some of these issues. But there are, in any business, you're going to have people who play outside the rules. The key is, what are the consequences for those that choose to break the rules, and how is it administered? How clearly is it articulated? That's something the horse business has got to work on, and I think we're making strides. With that, I'll open it up. Questions, comments. Again, thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be with you.
Well, thank you, Dan. We appreciate your perspective there. We have a question from Gray Campbell for you to tell us about the first time you were thrown or kicked by a horse.
So Gray Campbell, I'm sure, is a great Rotarian. He and I go back a long way from Monteagle, Tennessee. So Gray, it's great to hear from you and cross paths in this unusual way. Like I tell everybody on horses, all these horses will bite or kick you. They have it in them. It's just a matter if they're going to bite or kick you at that time. So you need to approach it that way. I'll tell you, the last time I was bitten by a horse was about a month ago by Essential Quality. I went by to visit him at the barn, and he was eating his lunch. I turned away, walked away. He came over and gave me a little love snap on the back of my shoulder. And that was actually the week of the Kentucky Derby. And so I knew he was ready to go, but that was the last time I was bitten by a horse. But yes, I have fallen off horses. I have been bitten by horses. I've never had a direct kick, but I don't want to jinx myself. I know the potential's out there for me.
Okay. Well, tell us what was the most disappointing loss that you have experienced in your capacity in the industry? Well,
I mean, there's two of them, and they both revolve around the Kentucky Derby. That's the race that we all want to win. It's the most well-known race in American racing, one of the best in the world. And the two that stand out, I'll give you a little perspective. The last 8 Kentucky Derbies, they've all had about 20 horses in the race. The last 8, the winner of the Kentucky Derby has been in the first 3 horses at every point in that race the whole way around. And that is historic. Usually you have Kentucky Derbies where horses can come from off the pace. They can be in mid-pack. But the last 8 times, if you're not in the first 3, when they cross the finish line the first time, it's one full lap at Churchill Downs, 1.25 miles. If you're not in the first 3 the first time they come around, you're not going to win the race the last 8 years. It's happened to us twice. 2015, American Pharoah wins the Kentucky Derby. We have a horse named Frosted. Frosted comes by the first time. He's 16th coming by the finish line the first time. American Pharoah's up in the first 3. Frosted makes his way around. He gets and finishes 4th and runs probably one of the best races of his life. I don't know that he would have won that year, but if he was closer, I'm confident he would have been in the frame for the end of it. That's one of them. Second one, also Kentucky Derby. Unfortunately, this year, Essential Quality, his only loss in his career was this year's Kentucky Derby. Went off the favorite. He broke outside. And the way I explain this, those that understand track and field, the 400 meters, it's a staggered start. It's one lap. And you get the advantage if you're in the outside lane, you're going to get a staggered start to make up for that ground loss. Essential Quality ran the Kentucky Derby in the outside lane with no staggered start. He gave up 70 feet to the winner, only got beat a length. He had a winning race in him. He's shown that again by the Belmont, which you saw the replay. That was very disappointing. But that's why they run the race. You got to have racing luck to go along with a good horse, and it was just not on our side that day. But Gray, thank you for the question.
Let me ask you another question, Dan. Darley Godolphin has a program that develops talent for the industry called the Godolphin Flying Start. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's going to be one of our principal's greatest legacies. It was started 16 years ago, and essentially the question was asked. We're a global operation, so we're based in Newmarket, England. We have divisions in Australia, Japan, Ireland, again, England, and here in America. So I run America, but we're a global operation. And the question was asked, where is the next generation of leaders coming from for the thoroughbred business? And the answer was there's not a clear path designed to train young people that want to commit to being in the thoroughbred business. So we started one, and it's a 2-year program. It's a full scholarship. We usually get 100 plus applications from all over the globe to get down to 12 spots. And I'm a trustee of the program, and it's one of the most meaningful things I do. We've now got over 160 graduates, I guess over 170 graduates over those 16 years that are now getting to a point where they are very influential in the business. They're all over the world. They're doing all aspects of the business. And this program takes them through a journey based on our operations around the world that shows them the marketing side. It shows them how to manage horses, the business side, the human resource side, all aspects of the business. So when they graduate after 2 years, it's a great networking opportunity where they meet people. They're ready to go out and to be influential in the business. It's a very special program.
Well, thank you very much for that. I like to analogize it to the Rhodes Scholarship Program for people in the thoroughbred industry. I mean, if you graduate from that, it's a gold standard validation.
It's a great program.
And all. I've met a number of your graduates. You also played football for the University of Georgia, and had some. You're not a big guy like a number of us, but tell us about some of that experience and what was the most memorable. Well,
there's one memory that sticks out. So, when I showed up, it was 1987. I was a preferred walk-on, and I had 2 things going for me. I was small but slow, and that's a bad combination. And the most memorable thing, and Coach Dooley was great, and it was a very good experience, but it was obvious I was in over my head from the first practice, the first lineup. You do a tackling drill. I was a defensive back. You line up against running backs and wide receivers, one-on-one tackling drill. And, the very first rep. And I look over there and you start doing the counting about where you are on your side of the line and they're on their side of the line. And I figured out real quickly that I was lined up against Hiawatha Barry from Winder, Georgia, who had just been moved from defensive line to fullback. And my very first tackle was Hiawatha. He put his helmet in my chest, bruised sternum, and that pretty much summarized my career at Georgia. But anyway, I'm still a Dogs fan, and but Hiawatha showed me real quick that it was not meant to be.
We have another question from the audience. That is, how do you measure the profitability of a horse?
All right, so there's 2 aspects of it. So very few racehorses in and of itself are profitable. And I kind of equate this to a lifestyle investment combined with a lottery ticket. Now, where you get profitable, and I mentioned, is in the stallion barn. And, it's going to cost you on average $60,000 to have a horse in training a year, somewhere in that ballpark. Some are going to be more. Some might be a little cheaper depending on how much they travel and what issues you have. But basically, it's $60,000 is what you're going to spend to keep the horse in training. Now, you got to factor in the cost of the horse on the front end. And, those horses, they run the gamut from thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. That is your starting point, your entry point. And so you really have to look at what your cost basis is for the horse combined with, what the earnings are, of what you've run out. But, there's races now that around the world, the most valuable race in the world is now in Saudi Arabia. It's a $20 million purse. We run a race in Dubai, the Dubai World Cup, which is a $12 million purse. So there are lottery tickets out there. And these horses, they're mostly colts that win this. If they go on and sell as a stallion, that's where the real money is, in the breeding shed to sell these stallions.
Okay. And what has been the most that your stable has ever paid for a horse?
Oh, God. Oh, man. Well, we have paid publicly at auction. Privately, I'm not going to get into that. We spent a lot more money privately than we have publicly. But publicly at auction, we were under bidder, thank goodness, which means we were the bid right under the winning bid of $16 million for a 2-year-old who never won a race, by the way. So we got lucky on that one. We did not win that bid. We have bid $13 million on a yearling. We have bid and won $10 million on a broodmare. So we have spent money, and luckily for our principal, this is a lifestyle investment. He's a horse lover. So, we do not have the same financial constraints maybe as other operations. But it can be expensive.
Well, like a lot of people and they're successful in the industry, sometimes the ones that you pay the least for are your most successful. And I know right now, as you had mentioned earlier, your stable is enjoying a lot of success this year from horses that you have bred from within your own barns. So congratulations on that. I know the Belmont Day was a big day for your stable. Not just here in the United States with the Belmont, but also overseas with the English Derby. If you can shed any insights.
Yeah, it was probably one of the best. So that was the first Saturday of June. Same day we won the Epsom Derby, which is one of the big classic races with a homebred. And then 8 hours later, different homebred here in America, Essential Quality wins the Belmont. And then we won some other big races in between. So it was a banner day. It's one that doesn't come very often. So we certainly enjoy that one.
And explain what a homebred is to people that are not familiar.
Yeah, homebred, that's where you own the broodmare. So the broodmare is like that's the asset that produces one foal a year. It's 11-month gestation. One stallion will breed up to 200 mares a year. It's all live covers. There's no artificial insemination in thoroughbred racing. It's got to be an actual live cover. So that mare is a unique property. A homebred is when you own the mare and it's born on your farm and you register it as you being the breeder.
Okay. And we have another question from the audience. How are jockeys compensated and what are their career paths?
Yeah, so jockeys, that's a good one. Jockeys are great athletes. So the jockey that's riding Essential Quality's name is Luis Saez, who is from Panama. And there's a lot of, Central Americans, some South Americans that are more prevalent now as jockeys. They are paid 10% of the purse for first, second, and third, or third. That's how they're compensated. Their career path is most of them start out just learning how to ride and exercising horses in the morning. So these horses live in barns, they have to be exercised every day. And a lot of these jockeys start by exercising horses and then graduate up to be race jockeys. But if you ever get a chance and you can go down to the rail of a thoroughbred race, these horses are going 35 to 40 miles an hour. and you can see them fly by you with these jockeys on them, inches apart from each other. You got to be an athletic, you got to have courage, and you got to have a sense for racing and in the pace of a race.
Well, thank you for your acknowledgement of Cott Campbell and the legacy that he afforded people like myself to be a part of this industry. I got to know Cott before I ever joined a racing syndicate, and had known of him since I was in my 20s, and he was trying to get racing established here in Georgia. And it's through his leadership that's opened the doors of opportunity for great experiences. And he gave me probably some of the best advice I could ever have gotten about it is when you put your money in a horse racing syndicate, consider it gone. And if anything comes back, that's a win. So anyway, thank you again for your leadership, and I'll now turn it back to President Cannon.
Well, Keith, thank you. And Dan, great insight into your industry. It's something that, many of us just see the Kentucky Derby and we think, wow, what a great fun event. Then we move on to other things, right? But yet you're there every day, every week, every year. If I missed it, just two quick questions for you as we wrap up. The first one is, and I apologize if I missed it, but, we talked about the profitability of a horse. We talked about the thrill of, essential quality winning. What is the journey of essential quality? When, he's relatively young. He how many races does he do? He hits stardom and then he goes out to pasture. But maybe just take a minute and just outline the life of essential.
Yes, the life. He would have been born 3 years ago on this farm, about half a mile from where I'm sitting. And so they're born. They live on this farm till their yearling year. So all thoroughbreds turn 1 year old the next year after they're born. He goes to pre-training. We use Ocala, Florida. It's a big spot for a lot of thoroughbreds. He's pre-trained in Ocala. Then as a 2-year-old, in the summer of his 2-year-old year, he was sent to his trainer. And that's when he's first on a racetrack with other horses. And they got to run that first race. You think you know what you got, but until they run the first race, you don't know. He actually won on Derby Day last year, which was in September. In his first race, that's when we knew we had something. He goes on to be champion 2-year-old. So now it's in that spot where his value may be worth more as a stallion than as a racehorse. So we'll get to the end of this year as a 3-year-old, see what he's ended up winning and what his profile is. And we'll have to decide, does he go to the stallion barn or does he stay on as a racehorse as a 4-year-old?
And so, if he goes the racehorse route, that's basically a 2.5 year journey, right?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there are horses running. In his case, he would probably not run past the age of 4. But we have horses in our stable that are 4, 5, and sometimes 6, but rarely 6 do we keep them running.
Right. So, and then otherwise they would go, you might put him into stallion and just say, hey, let's not get him injured.
That's right. They're worth too much. They're worth too much as a stallion that it becomes a no-brainer that you got to put him in the stallion barn.
And it's interesting. So within the first couple races, you have to assess pretty quickly if someone like Essential Quality, a horse like Essential Quality, is going to make it as a racehorse. So you get, after 3 or 4 races, you'll be able to make that determination, it sounds like.
Usually you can. I mean, some will surprise you. Some are late bloomers, just like humans. And they're not at 2 and 3. They're not as good as they'll be at 4. I mean, a horse does not mature physically until they're 4. So a lot of it is, like I compare 2-year-old racing, that's like the AAU circuit for basketball. Usually the best players at AAU wind up in NBA, but not all of them. So you got to kind of play it out and see how it's going to go.
It's interesting. I do have one other question, but I'm remembering when I did do a tour of several of the thoroughbred horse racing barns and whatnot in Kentucky. It's amazing the personality these horses have.
Yes.
If they're a champion, they know it and they carry themselves like it. Is that something you see as a common trait?
Oh yeah, it's different. I call it the pyramid of talent. I mean, just all species. I think there's this pyramid of talent where the ones at the top, they're just different, and horses are no different. I mean, you can go through our barns and the stallion barn. Those guys, they look different physically, and they know that they're special. So it's something to behold.
It's pretty amazing. They have attitude, and some of it's good, some of it's annoying, but
they all have personalities. Yes, all have personalities, and you got to learn them pretty quick because they weigh 1,200 pounds, and if you read it wrong, it'll leave a mark.
It'll leave a mark. Last question for you. I'm just always curious as we hear about industries, during our programming and CEOs come and talk about their businesses. How is technology changing horse racing and horse breeding?
Well, so from the betting side, probably the biggest impact is, I'll just use the Belmont as an example. There was probably $40–50 million bet into the Belmont win pool. Essential Quality was 2-1 when he walked up to the gate. And again, it's a math formula. The gate's open, he goes off 6-5, which means his odds were virtually cut in half. There are now these algorithms, these people that are betting millions of dollars develop these algorithms that they are funneling money in at the last minute based on odds. And so technology is playing a big role in impacting odds. You know, horsemanship is still pretty old school, but there are technologies being used, microchips, for example, and other things to identify horses. But mainly you're seeing it on the gambling side where technology is really making an impact.
So the art of training, the art of breeding, I mean, all that's still old school.
There's some technology. I mean, there's some work being done on genetics. There's some technology, but it is not nearly as progressive as you would think.
Interesting. Well, great. Well, thank you for taking the time to give us some insight into your world. It'll make the Kentucky Derby, the Belmont Stakes so much richer, the Preakness, so much richer as we watch those now in the coming years. So we really appreciate your perspectives here. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.